Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Well, welcome again to Sunday City on this nice day. It's a fine day for a peace rally at Union Square and Castro Street Fair. Let's begin by introducing ourselves by our first names. Are there any people here for the first time today? And what's your name?
My name is G. Singh.
Oh, G. Singh, we give you a special welcome. Anybody else? My name is Paul.
Joe.
Mike.
Michael.
Oh, let's stop it.
Hubbard.
Bob.
Patrick.
George.
Kay. Louis. Carl.
Paul.
David.
Marty.
Steve.
Bob.
Bill.
Bruce.
Robin.
Greg.
Fred.
Jim.
Peter.
Martin.
Clint.
Snake.
Luke.
Bill.
Richard.
Lee. Nichols.
Okay. Wes Nisker is our speaker, and after he speaks, we'll have some announcements. Then we'll have a social, and then after that, we'll go to lunch. And I'll just read from the papers so I won't get lost in what I know about Wes Nisker. He's the co-founder and editor of the International Buddhist journal Inquiring Minds, and has practiced Vipassana meditation for 30 years. He's the author of Buddhist Nature, Evolution as a Guide to Enlightenment and Crazy Wisdom, a romp through the philosophies of East and West. Not to mention, if you don't like the news, go out and make your own. Isn't that the title of your first book?
It is.
No, isn't
It is the title of my second book, and it's actually a revised edition of it is coming out in April, called The Big Bang, the Buddha, and the Baby Boom, which is that's been revived.
Okay, well, yeah, you can talk about that. As I hope you will, please. And he has a regular sitting group in Berkeley. It's Wednesday night at St. John's Episcopal still?
Yes, but I'm not leading it anymore. I go there once a month or so, but it's another teacher.
Okay, but I know half our song is from the East Bay, and there are many East Bay city groups, and one of us used to do regularly. In addition to leading the regular, he teaches classes in meditation and philosophy at Spirit Rock and other locations in the country.
Thanks. Yeah, we meet at St. John's on the side of the chapel there, and my sense is that someday the Buddhists will have the churches, and that we'll rent out the basements to the other the Christian denominations. It'll take a few generations, but we'll get there. Well, good to be with you all this morning. I'd like to begin with a couple poems. I'm a poetry lover, and one in particular grabbed my attention and has been my sort of theme poem for this last few months. It's by a Japanese poet named Ikkyu. Passion's red thread is infinite like the earth, always under me. Now I'm 70, still alive, looking up every night and snapping my fingers at time and the promise of love. Listen, I'd like to give you something, but what would help? self, other, right, wrong, wasting your life arguing with it, face it, you're happy. Don't worry, please. How many times do I have to say it? There is no way not to be who you are and where. It's like a mantra, you know. There's no way not to be who you are and where. I think that's a great line. And this is Hafiz, the Sufi, came about a century after Rumi, and who has become popular recently, and I like this one, Tripping Over Joy. What is the difference between your experience of existence and that of a saint? The saint knows that the spiritual path is a sublime chess game with God, and that the beloved, God, has just made such a fantastic move that the saint is now continually tripping over joy and bursting out in laughter and saying, I surrender. Whereas, my dear, I'm afraid you still think you have 1,000 serious moves. And both those poems are really about the same thing, which is the sense of the inevitability of things being the way they are and us being who we are. And it's really, at the core of the Buddhist teaching is the concept of anatta, that this is not something that I own. This self is not, with a small s, is not something that I own. That it is living through me in some very, very deep way. And embracing ourselves is really about all we can do. We might be able to come to some new kind of freedom within this personality's constraints and within the constraints of being human, some kind of ease and freedom with that's living through us. But it really is, we have very little choice. So both those poems speak, I think, to that. And I've been also very taken with the sense in the Dharma of, and especially in recent months, and maybe it's because of the world situation and how, I guess it was just a few years ago, everybody was kind of making a lot of money and just chugging along and everything was going to be great, and then the collapse and the collapse of the economy and the election of the Bush administration, or the selection of the Bush administration, and this kind of drumbeat for war, and just how persistent the difficulties that we face are in this particular incarnation, this karma of Earth, being Earthlings. And the Buddha's first noble truth is so unique and so profound in that it's saying that, this is where you start. You have to start by accepting that this is not easy. This life is not an easy condition. I mean, first of all, there's death and the pre-knowledge of our own death, which is something we're all given as humans. The inevitability of old age and of sickness and of not getting what you want, and it really is not. When you strip it down to the bare facts, it's not a very pretty picture. We're always trying to put a good face on it and trying to make it seem like it's a beautiful thing and serves some higher purpose. And this is not to say that there isn't joy and some moments of real happiness and ease, but they are fleeting, like everything else. And the core truth of existence in this form is dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. Sometimes it's translated as suffering, but a better translation is unsatisfactoriness or unreliability. It's so fragile, our existence. So I like to, I have this litany of sort of the stark, naked facts, and I think it's really helpful. Most people say that when they hear and actually embrace the truth of this, it is very, very soothing, relieving, because it's an antidote to our idealism that we're going to somehow get it all right and live happily ever after, which is a myth of our culture, as well as, I think, a continuing myth. You know, we're going to get it all together and it's going to stay together. And, of course, it's contrary to all evidence that this is ever the case. But, so I'd just like you to consider with me, just for a few moments, the bare facts. First of all, we didn't ask to be born, or at least we don't remember asking. And we wake up, sometime in early childhood and suddenly realize we're in a body, we've got a life to be lived, and we've got an identity, and there it is. And when we're born with this most powerful instinct, which is to stay alive, the survival instinct. We want nothing more than that, to stay alive. So we don't choose to be born, and we can't choose to die. So it's like nature trapped us in this life. We don't get to choose who we will be in this lifetime. We don't get to choose our bodies. No, I don't remember any catalog of choices, Would you like eyes in the front and the back, or, would you like to swim, fly, or walk as your primary means of locomotion? You get the standard bipedal, mid-sized mammal form that we humans get. We don't get to choose our personality. The geneticists say that when we're born with a certain mixture of neurochemicals and genetic makeup that gives us a certain temperament. We're either born withdrawn, with a tendency to be withdrawn, or aggressive, or reward dependent, or novelty seeking. There's a number of different kinds of temperaments that they've named. And then the psychologists tell us that whatever isn't set at birth will be firmly in place long before we have any choice in the matter at all. Which means that we didn't get to choose our parents, the dear ones who will set our lifelong neurosis for us. So we don't get to choose our body, we don't get to choose our personality. We're not free to be who we are. We are forced to be who we are. Then consider that, you get this body, you have to feed it a few times a day to keep it going. That means you have to work, think, or schlep, or whatever it is, make money to feed yourself. You fight gravity every time you get up in the morning, every time you take a step. You're not told exactly why you're here or what you're supposed to be doing while you're here. And you're given just enough awareness to know that you do exist and that someday you will die, which you very much don't want to do. These are the facts of life. As my friend Wavy Gravy says, if you don't have a sense of humor, it's just not funny. I actually think Nietzsche put it best. He said, God's only excuse is that he doesn't exist. But there's a great relief also in recognizing these truths, and in really because we all sense their truth. Because first of all, it means that, we weren't singled out for punishment. That we share this condition with each other. And misery loves company, that's, for sure. But it also just gives us a realistic sense of what we are doing and in this life. And the Buddha said that the only true happiness can be found by eliminating the false sense of self, the false idea that it is us alone that is doing this, that really this is our common condition. And the more we understand that, the more we see that this is the human condition living through us, and it's not our personal drama so much. That we can shift our focus and actually find much more ease with our personality, with our life, the life we have to live. It's always a very difficult concept, the concept of anatta, or no self, that is taught by the Buddha. But it really is what he means, is that this is not a self-existing entity that belongs to us. The body is kind of a loner, He says at one point in one of the sutras, this body does not belong to me or anyone else. It has arisen due to past causes and conditions. Now, he didn't know the specifics of evolution, but he understood that we didn't create this form, this condition of human existence, that it comes from a great stream of causes and conditions and circumstances that we have nothing to do with. And it is that understanding that begins to give us some ease about the temporary appearance of this form, this life. We know, I'm very interested in evolutionary science. I never was interested in science when I was young, but since actually starting to practice meditation and study Buddhism, I've become extremely interested in evolutionary psychology, evolutionary biology, because it's such a powerful message of anatta, of no self. It is, you realize that this whole life was shaped by millions of years of the life stream adjusting to different environmental conditions, and there weren't legs before land arose out of the oceans because the legs were unnecessary. You also begin to see how young a species we are. I mean, if you look at this story of evolution in biological time, we're just babies. We're just starting. We just got these big brains, and they didn't come with a very good instruction manual. We're really just learning how to use them. When you think that Lao Tzu and the Buddha and Socrates were 2,500 years ago, and Darwin and Freud and Einstein are basically our contemporaries, you realize that we're just coming to a new understanding of who we are, and maybe how we can better sort of control or override the instincts that we've inherited and come to some real consciousness. We call ourselves, we could maybe live up to the name Homo sapiens sapiens, twice knowing humans, which now I think means that we have to hear something at least twice before we get it. It's like... But, so I wanted to just say those things about just, I think it's useful at a time, a difficult time, to really touch into the deeper stories and the deeper perspectives on the human condition and who we are. Partly so that we don't get into this kind of blame and, it's this group's fault and it's this group's, and if only this were, taken care of, then everything would be all right. And just so that we approach what is going on realistically. And this doesn't mean to say, I don't think we shouldn't get off our butts and do something about what's going on. And I can't tell anybody what to do. But I think we all need to search our conscience and feel what we really believe. Feel it. And if we really believe in nonviolence, and if we really believe that going to war is not going to solve anything, but is just going to make things worse, that then find something that we can do to really, and to talk about it and to get motivated to try to find something that we can do to make our own gift come alive in trying to promote the values that we hold. It's a dark time. It's a critical moment. Let me just read you a little. I have it here. Yeah, just a little piece that I did on the radio that was a month or so ago, but it was when the World Summit was happening in Johannesburg. The World Summit on Sustainable Development took place in Johannesburg, South Africa. But George Bush did not attend because he was too busy in Crawford, Texas, making plans to go to war. Leading politicians and activists of the world came together to see what could be done to preserve the Earth's environment, to create a more just economic order, and to build a sustainable and peaceful future for all of us, while the President of the United States was busy making plans to go to war. This summer there was unprecedented flooding in Europe, China, droughts across the United States and Australia. All around the world the coral reefs are dying, Alaska is melting, and the Bush administration is making plans to launch a war. The less developed nations of the world are asking us, the richest people in the world, to offer a little more of our wealth to help lift people out of poverty, which everyone knows is the breeding ground of violence. But the Bush administration is cutting America's foreign aid budget and spending even more of our wealth on preparations for war. To be precise, the United States military budget will be $400 billion next year, which is more than the next 12 largest military budgets in the world combined. At the Johannesburg Summit, all the nations of the world were asked to set a goal to make renewable energy sources account for at least 15% of the world's energy use by the year 2010. But this proposal was opposed primarily by the United States. Instead, the Bush administration is planning to go to war in Iraq, take over the oil fields there so that we can continue to burn fossil fuels. That is one of the reasons the U.S. government is planning to go to war. In the United States, carbon dioxide emissions are double those of the next largest polluter, which is China, and the U.S. levels of greenhouse gases have increased by 18% in the 10 years since the last Earth Summit in Rio. But the Bush government refuses to even raise fuel efficiency standards for automobiles. It seems the Oil-Qaeda network has taken over our government, and they are planning to go to war. All of this makes me very sad and angry. I love my country, but I believe that our current government is blind, brutish, arrogant, for no obvious reason, and woefully lacking in vision or compassion. And it is incumbent upon all of us who feel this way to put our energy into resistance. So, I know that it's spiritually incorrect to be so, politically opinionated at a spiritual gathering, at a Buddhist gathering, but forgive me, I could not help myself. Anyway, I'd like to just open it up for discussion now, and any kinds of issues or questions or comments, or if you want to ask a question about your meditation practice or the Buddha's teaching, or politics, engaged Buddhism, anything, we can just open the floor and. Go ahead.
Well, I know that you are a strong presence in the Buddhist community in the Bay Area, and therefore I imagine you have your ear to a lot of what's going on in the Buddhist community, hopefully nationwide. And I wonder, we talked about this briefly before your talk, but if you know just if there is any concerted effort at all from Buddhist communities in response to what's going on.
Not specifically, aside from the Buddhist Peace Fellowship, which is, by the way, in trouble, and we're going to maybe say a few words about it towards the end. Specifically, no concerted kinds of action. I know that in some of the marches there are Buddhist groups that march, and they're usually affiliated with the Buddhist Peace Fellowship. But in general, everywhere I go these days, people are saying, we have to do something. What can we do? The energy is up. Everybody is recognizing, or many people are recognizing that something is seriously wrong, and the energy is there. And I don't know what will galvanize people or bring focus to this energy that's out there. Sometimes I hope for the man in the white horse, or the political figure who is going to inspire us and be charismatic and say this is what we must do and let's all do it, and people would get behind that. I don't see that person, and I don't know. Maybe it takes some kind of catastrophe. Maybe if we did go to war in Iraq, it would galvanize the energy of the opposition. But I don't know specifically. I'm at a loss. I mean, I'm going to go to this rally today just because I want to be there and feel the energy of all these people who are opposed to it. It's almost more for a personal sense of, I'm not alone, and in my feelings that this is a disaster about to happen.
The Buddhist Peace Fellowship met this week on that subject, and some of the talk was about there's some groups going on about how we can take care of ourselves spiritually in this time, which is really important. And one thought is one thought was to break away from taking care of ourselves solely, and what can we do to make effect on people? And my suggestion was to circulate the 800 number that you can call in Washington, it's a switchboard where they will direct you to any congressperson you want, either the senators or your congressperson. And so I'm trying to circulate that number. I've been like a deer frozen in the headlights myself.
Yeah, so many of them.
I haven't done a damn thing. I haven't done a damn thing except sit at home and contract and contract and contract.
Right.
And so I think for me, the personal practice of trying to relax that contraction, calling and circulating the 800 number, there are a number of important demonstrations coming up in October in San Francisco, the first one being today at 2 o'clock in Union Square. There's one...
The 26th.
Is it the 26th? And that's going to be a big one in San Francisco and Washington. And I too, like Wes, feel like anyone can give any political view they want to at this meeting, and I'm not, trying to override anyone's political feelings. But I thought this week that it wasn't until people took to the streets that segregation, gay rights, the Vietnam War, I just thought how sad it is. In my lifetime, the most important changes have been from people having to march in the streets. Just, to me, that's just awesome. And I don't feel, I feel like, I'm 58 years old, it's time to do it again. A lot of us are kind of tired. Not tired, but we felt like Wes did.
Right.
We did it. It's fixed, It's fixed.
I had this image of, a whole march coming down Market Street with walkers, everybody in a row.
The next crisis, that's what it's going to be.
Right. Yeah, Ed, go ahead.
I'm kind of like two minds about this. First of all, I want to say that when you started out that guided meditation, I thought, wow, Buddhism 101. But I like your sense of humor and what you find humorous. You obviously have something to say. On the one hand, I don't like Bush like a lot of us doing here, and mostly I tend to think of him as being stupid. On the other hand, I also find Saddam to be probably a sociopath. And like Hitler, in the face of that, pacifism doesn't do much good. Where would Gandhi be if England would have been more of a psyche of Hitler or something? But on the other hand, I begin to think more and more that Bush himself may be a sociopath. So I'm kind of caught up here in not caught up in enigma or whatever, but. So on the one hand, I would like to see that man gotten rid of Saddam, because I think he is if he had the bomb, he would use it, just like people say about Hitler. I have no doubt in my mind that he would find some way to deliver it somewhere, maybe at us, but could be anywhere Israel would. On the other hand, Bush is just all the things said about it, and what you were talking about is just also true. So on the one hand, I detest the man. On the other hand, I kind of realize he has a point about Saddam. And if the truth be known, probably that whole Arab world has probably declared war against us in some fashion. And yet it's our fault, too, to a great extent.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I can't go rah, rah, rah demonstrating. On the other hand, I see this all as it's a form of madness. It's gearing up. Who knows where it'll lead? As I suggested last week to somebody, that maybe Saddam Hussein is the beast, and he's arose again, as the Christians might look at it. He died, and now he's rose again. He may be, and that's how they might look at it. Maybe that's how Bush looks at it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's enough argument.
Well, thank you. That is a question. He is obviously, he murders his own people. Mass murder. He's crazy. And what do we do? Anyway, yeah.
I had an interesting experience when you were reading from your radio show. I started crying, getting in touch with the pain and the work. Then suddenly it shifted, and it was like what you were saying was like clouds going by. I was sitting and just seeing that. It was really interesting. And it was much more felt more of my nature. Your words and the tears, everything was just sort of going by, and it was in a much quieter state. And the question that I have is, could you speak to something about equanimity here? Because I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
About because otherwise there's all that attachment to, attachment to peace can be just as powerful as attachment to war in terms of Buddhist practice. Attachment, and what you were saying is how to hold some kind of equanimity and being attached to any cause, given what you talked about in evolution. Maybe this is just sort of what's happening, what is now, and part of that evolution. And I have trouble. It's hard to hold all that.
It's an edge of paradox. I mean, in some sense, it is another appearance of this evolving, unfolding universe, and there is some right action in not being involved at all. I think that sitting back and becoming peace, as Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, and emptying yourself, and really that sitting itself is a form of activism and a form of peacemaking. But on the other hand, I mean, the Buddha himself made some very important decisions about how he was going to live and how his followers, he took people out of the culture and out of the society and out of the cities. And these were very deliberate things that he did. He made choices along the way. I think that if we really say, okay, I'm going to try to decrease suffering as much as possible wherever I see it, if that's what comes out of our practice, out of our seeing of ourselves and embracing ourselves, if compassion grows, then we each have to decide how we're going to do that. And for some of us, it'll just be in trying to be kinder and more compassionate in the circles that we live in our immediate circles. And for others, it will translate into a more social and political stage. But there's some paradox in there, and you could let my words just float through in a way.
Well, it's not like I haven't done demonstrations. I've also seen people in the peace movement that are incredibly unhappy and suffering because of the level of attachment. Absolutely. The attachment, you're attached to the elimination of suffering. That's a good attachment. I wouldn't worry about that. Being attached to the outcome of your actions is the problem. If you think that you're going to save the world, you're in trouble. Everyone who's tried it has ended up in unpleasant circumstances and has failed. Yeah.
Yeah, I too, ran and stand around my house, and there's just a rage of impotence and ineffectiveness, and I think we should all take the streets and shut every city down in this country. But on the other hand, or at the same time, in the past week, I've gotten word from 3 different friends who have all almost died. They're all straight guys, all atheists, all committedly professional without having cultivated a spiritual practice in their life. And all 3 of them feel that they have been saved by their friends' prayers. And they're saying, don't stop, whatever, don't. It was this extremely poignant acknowledgement that they feel that they have been buoyed by a spiritual current coming in their direction. Mm-hmm. And I think as impossible as it is to imagine, but I think that they're really, the spiritual dimension it does rule. And that our prayers for peace, and even praying for if I can sit down and say, maybe help.
Right.
Maybe it lets him, maybe there's softening. I think
right.
we need to put our spiritually and way in there on that level and believe that it can happen. I also believe in street work because that's the only thing that ever. I mean, there's always been street work. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think the whole thing of praying for our enemies. This is maybe why we never had a nuclear holocaust. Nobody wanted it. It was the deep spiritual intention of the race not to go there. And I don't know, there's something there that the idea of praying for Bush just it turns my stomach. I think he does that next to me. That I have
Right, there was Enlightenment.
It's challenging.
Yeah. Well, that's who knows what effect that has in the world and our prayers. And Ram Dass used to had a picture of Alexander Haig on his altar. How big is your compassion and your inclusion of in your heart? Yeah.
Just to put a footnote to what Jim said, it has been noted that during the civil rights movement, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was at the head of it, he said, we have to pray and act. And it worked. After he died, his disciples or followers said, we don't have time for prayer, we just act. And then it didn't work as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, that's why I hope that the Buddhists will test their enlightenment now. We've been sitting, some of us, for a few decades now, and it is a big community now. It's grown in size, and maybe we can bring a new kind of non-blaming spirit to the whole peace movement, or to the left, what's left. Yeah.
I've been struggling with the whole Iraq issue also, and as people have been talking, I've been thinking about it, and I think one of the things that's important, which ties into some of the later things people said, is that it's important that we don't make those with whom we differ that are closest to us into the enemy. And I mean, some of it is, in some ways, it's pretty silly. Think about, I hear people focusing more on hating Bush. But think about at least what we know in our imperfect information of would you rather live under Bush or under Hussein? And it seems to me that that's fairly clear. But the issue of karma keeps going on. If you go back, it's much of the difficulty of the Iraq situation is created by the Israeli-Palestinian situation. And Israel was essentially created by Hitler. Without Hitler in the Second World War, if you look at the Zionist movement, it's, I believe, most unlikely that would have existed. Hitler, in turn, was created, at least historians believe, by some of the harsh repatriations visited upon Germany as a result of the First World War. That's beyond to the point where I know very much about it. But it goes on for one step after another, and it's very confusing because one could say, well, Hitler could have been stopped early, and then all this other chain would have stopped. But I just can't find any clear answers to it. And Bush, I believe, is in a strong sense, in the sense that you were talking about earlier, Bush is every man. Bush is someone who is seeking to protect himself from life's harshness, and presumably those who are around him, and avert death, and all those kinds of things. And I think it's of some importance if we attempt to participate in things like peace movements and rights and so forth, to at least recognize, and hopefully it won't leave us as it has someone like me here stuck in the headlines, but I can't help but recognize my own culpability and our own culpability. Anybody who knows anything about most of the rest of the world is also aware that we are unimaginably wealthy. Each of us here, no matter how much poverty we think we live in, or the welfare that we find ourselves in, or living in San Francisco, one of the two most expensive cities in the country, and I strongly include myself in this, and yet we are everyman. We want to help people, but not deprive ourselves. And I think with my arthritis flaring up, well, I may need the money for doctors in the future, or medications. And so I don't have any real answers to this, except that I think that the point of seeking to end the suffering of all and not turns except for, it's the except for, well, it's sort of except for George Bush, except for Saddam Hussein, and then except for my uncle who treated me harshly. And then there was the plumber who screwed up my faucet repair. There's no end to it. So I'm sorry if I've rambled. It's a thought.
Nicholas, did you have something?
I just have one comment on the evolutionary development as a way to frame this for me, is the idea that Jesus taught that you reap what you sow. And our country, along with many in the world, has been a country that's developed fundamentally on the principle of violence and militarism. And this agenda, it's an agenda, kind of national identity that really has not abated in the history of our country. And it seems to me in an evolutionary process, really from almost a cleansing, that, the violence has to play and will play itself out. It'll have its logical conclusion, which may be a flowering, an opening to something that is very new in the human psyche and the spiritual development. And for me, that's what a lot of the peace movement needs to be about, is an awareness that there's an awakening that's unfolding. We may not know it or identify it, and I have a sense that people with Buddhist or Eastern orientation or Native American orientations and spiritualities seem to me to be in a place where they're more open to what this awakening is and is unfolding. At the same time, it's an acknowledgement that there's an inevitability about the violence and the destruction, which is very frightening to me. It brings up a lot of pain and means there's going to be a lot, already is, has been, and will continue to be a lot of death. I think that was Gandhi's reply to Hitler, was he scratched his head and said, the only thing I do know is that there will be a lot of death in responding to a regime of violence. But underneath all that was a deeper belief, and I think I heard you speak to that, a deeper belief of a movement in the evolutionary consciousness. It was really beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for that.
Thank you. I think you kind of summed it up in a sense, both having the kind of perspective that knows that the karma of the world has to work itself out, and also the hope and seeing hope in even our understanding of that. And Anyway, thanks all of you for speaking your mind and eloquently and.
Yeah, thank you, Wes, for the humor and for, I don't know if we've had a major speaker specifically on the politics of the times, and I think we really do need to work at ourselves in our Sangha so we don't feel like we're going nuts in ourselves at home.
Exactly.
Like I do very frequently.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for you to allow for your thoughts, your wise thoughts and sense of humor, and to let us think too. I also told a few people, told Wes, that at the Buddhist Peace Fellowship meeting this week, I was in the base program for years, and so I kept asking Diana Winston. She kept referring to internal restructuring, and afterwards, what the heck's going on? And it's a euphemism for they're broke and they might go under. And I have. They need a whole lot of money, like thousands of dollars by mid-month, or they're going to have to let go of their part-time staff. And they've already let go of base program operations, the prison program operations. They're suspended. And it's a real emergency that I have a real hard connection to because I was in base. And they are actually, technically, they assume the role of our parent group. There's 13 international affiliates with base, and our group and the Lesbian Sangha and the Buddhist AIDS Project are 3 of those 13. And as far as I can see, our Sangha isn't struggling nearly as much as the Buddhist Peace Fellowship is right now. And so I put out an email, and maybe some people in the steering committee and others didn't receive because I just sent it out yesterday morning. But I'm wondering if we can give this morning's Dhamma collection to the Buddhist Peace Fellowship. That would be one of 52 collections. And if anyone wants to suggest that isn't a wise thing to do, please do it. But it made me realize that there are a lot of nonprofits going under. It's really difficult because the federal government has put a lot of the burden of work that they used to do onto nonprofits. And now the nonprofits are going under. And it's a very challenging time for my practice. It's very challenging. And I would hate to see the Buddhist Peace Fellowship go under. They have a development director, but they just got one. And it's going to take a while to get a plan. And it could very well not have enough going to bring it back by the time a development plan is going on. So if there's anyone think it's not wise to give to the Buddhist Peace Fellowship this morning?
Can I just real quick?
Yeah.
I think it's a very worthwhile way to make a contribution, as are there thousands and thousands of other very worthwhile causes out there. I just think it's a dangerous precedent to just spontaneously give off today's donations to a particular cause. I think that we should have it be a little more thought out and have like a steering committee look at it and make them decide whether they want to make a donation in the name of GBF, just to give over the days. Because then like next week it would be to save the whales or something. And I just think that the cause is worthwhile, but we need to do it in a way that's a little more structured. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Well, I have the Buddhist, and I acknowledge that. And I have the Buddhist Peace Fellowship's address. And also, if anyone wants to give me any donations after today's meeting, I will forward it to the Buddhist Peace Fellowship. So that's one of the announcements in announcement time here. And where's our host? Give some other host announcements.
Oh,
I'm the host this morning, also known as the snack person. We'll have refreshment, and feel free to use any cups in the sink, but if you use them, please wash them, put them back. Also, we will have a banana bowl as usual, and so please put $5. That's the usual amount that we request, but if you can put more, please do so. And if you can't put that much amount, that's perfectly fine, but please contribute. So again, welcome all of you, and thank you very much for attending.
Jim?
Yeah, there is a sign-up sheet for the newsletter and email announcements for any of your people, or with any overview of that trip out on the table as well.
And speaking of the newsletter, there was a new newsletter that's going out today, along with the fundraising letter. And so we'd like to ask as many of you as possible to stay and help getting the newsletter ready to go out. Can I just see a show of hands of those people who would be willing to do that? Okay, all right, great.
I wanted to let you all know that I'm doing a monologue with a comic monologue with songs starting in the second weekend of November, running for 3 weekends at the Marsh Theater on Valencia. It's called The Big Bang, the Buddha, and the Baby Boom. So come on along. It's fun. We have a good time. You'll have a good time.
Valencia and
where? It's on Valencia between 22nd, not far from here.
There are flyers out there.
Yeah, I have the flyer out there.
A reminder that talks are available on the internet at the GBF website, gaybuddhist.org.
Do you want to close?
Yeah, I want to close with...
Snake, do you have an announcement?
I'm a mail person, so I have a lot of returned newsletters, and anyone who's new or missed a particular issue, they might check the table, and if they're interested in the subject, to take it.
I think nobody sums it up better than Walt Whitman. This is the preface to the 1855 edition of Leaves of Grass. It is part of it. This is what you should do. Love the earth and sun and animals. Despise riches. Give alms to everyone who asks. Stand up for the stupid and crazy. Devote your income and labor to others. Hate tyrants. Argue not concerning God. Have patience and indulgence toward people. Re-examine all you have been told in school or church or any book. Dismiss what insults your very soul, and your flesh shall become a great poem. Thank you all.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.